We are back in the black hole of real estate, and today we're going to spend a lot of time talking about, is it harder to get a home under contract in this market, or is it actually harder to keep it under contract? This is Ron Wysokarski, your host for the black hole of real estate. All right, so we have come to a point where the market is leveling off and the inventory is increasing. There's more to choose from. Now, interest rates are higher and the economy is a little wacky right now, but those things really are not the determiners of most people that are ready to move. People move because they need more space or less space. They're getting married or divorced or having kids or becoming empty nesters, getting job relocations, or maybe they've just outgrown the home that they were in because their income levels increased, or they've got to downsize because the income has decreased. There's so many reasons that people move, and you're faced with finding the right home. And the search can take a long time because even though there's more inventory, we're still not awash with inventory. There's still not a ton of inventory to look at right now. So when you finally find a few homes that you want to look like, and you're pre-qualified, or maybe you're paying cash, you've got all the dynamics lined up. You've chosen the area. You've really done the research. And, of course, you do the usual look at a bunch of homes and make some offers and maybe be disappointed or even sometimes outbid, even in this market. You eventually land on a home. And you got an accepted offer. You're happy. You make the escrow. The seller's happy. I mean, let's face it. If two people sign, they're probably both happy with the deal. And that's a good start. The problem becomes, how do you keep it under contract? And the inspections that what we're facing right now is difficult. And it's not just the house. There's other things we're inspecting along the way. So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time talking about that today. We've had shows where we've talked about the 4-point inspection, the roof system, and the HVAC system, the plumbing and electrical, all the major things. We've talked about wind mitigation, which, especially in Florida, it's going to test it. Will it withstand a Category 5 hurricane, 150 miles an hour? The wood destroying organism inspection, WDO. Some people call it termite one. They're going to look for any live activity of things like termites or perhaps wood rot or damage from water that could affect the house as well. And of course, then you can also check into, septics and wells and pools and anything else you can think of. Sometimes home is a whole house generator. It might have solar. Those things need to be inspected. So with that said, what can stop a deal? Well, I just mentioned solar. And let's suppose that you are purchasing a home that has solar on it, and you've agreed on a contract price. And oh, by the way, the solar on top has a separate loan to it that maybe somebody forgot to include in there, or just missed it. It's very common. Homes at 400 grand that have solar on top, at a cost of like 50 grand, they're not necessarily worth 450 in the open market. So, for instance, if you bought a home and you paid 400 for it, then you added solar after the fact, thinking, okay, I need to sell it a year later. I got to get my 450 out. That added value might be important for the person that owns it, but the perceived savings over 10, 20, 30 years is not necessarily exciting to the next person. So much like when you purchase a car, and some are a little more stripped down than others, and others have like every single option, they may not matter to the person that just wants to get back and forth to work or travel or just drive around. Well, in this case with the solar, you've got to account for that, the cost of the solar. So sometimes it's owned, 100% outright, not an issue. It just goes along with the sale. Super easy. There's financing within there. Now you've got to account for all of that extra cost. Some of those loans are assumable. You can take over the payments, but you also have to qualify. And if you happen to be qualifying for a mortgage and also qualifying for the solar, you've got two loans going on at once. So they're going to have to play off of each other. And each loan officer will be two different people. They're going to be well coordinated on it. Now, it's doable, and you can get through it. The third piece about the solar, if it's leased for some reason, and you say, hey, take it off, it's going to impact the roof system. So there's a lot going on with the solar, so that could absolutely get in the way of keeping a deal under contract. Now, insurance. Oh, for the love of God, we've talked about, the forever roof or the 50-year roof not necessarily being forever for 50 years. So if there is something with the roof and there's damage to the underlayment or the sheeting, and there's some evidence of water damage on there, that may very well invalidate the 4-point inspection and the wind mitigation report for the better insurance. And the difference can be staggering on waterfront property. Some of these roofs are going 50, 75, even $100,000. I've seen them at 200. If they're tile or cement or they have different types of architectural designs to it, they're going to be super expensive. And when an owner has a roof that they believe is good for another 20 years and should qualify for insurance, and then the inspection turns up something else where they're telling the insurance company, you got a couple years of life left, we have this conundrum, who's going to pay for that roof? And it doesn't easily get solved. I believe in the beginning, you make offers, you go through inspections, you do the repair part, but with the roof, wow, they say, look, I got 20 years left on the roof. I'm not giving you a new roof because I've got a report that says it's got 20 years left of useful life of the roof. Of course, the buyer's like, well, we got a report this week that says it's got like 2, and the insurance wants to see at least 10 years of useful life, so we got a problem. And the cost of the insurance could make it go from 10 grand to 25 grand. I mean, it's a big thing. So those annual discounts of 5 and 10 grand on the wind mitigation are super significant. And what happens many times is over the course of a few days or a week or even longer, these prolonged negotiations and extensions of the inspection periods, what we're finding is that both sides are exhausting themselves on these details. And I've seen twice in the last month where we eventually got the owner of the home to be willing to pay for the cost of a new roof. One was 70 grand, one was $54,000. But by the end of it, the buyer started noticing other things about the house. It's like, okay, well, I got a $50,000 roof, but at $1.5 million, many people expect it to have a good roof on there, and that's the conundrum. The owner does feel it's a good roof, and it's got useful life, and the reports might say differently. The negotiations that happen within the inspection period are the single biggest determiner whether or not that deal gets to the next place. And there still could be mortgages that have appraisals now coming into the mix. But when you have something that's unforeseen, and it clearly is, I mean, if you have a home, when you bought it a few years ago and you thought you had 20 years worth of life because that's what your inspector said, that's what you're led to believe. Why would I give that big of a credit for something that's not going to happen 15, 20 years down the road? What we're finding in the insurance industry right now is the standards have changed rather abruptly for most people that don't do this every day and are not buying homes every day and are not selling homes every day. So even though it's been a change over the last few years, it's becoming far more noticeable. And every transaction seems to matter. The craziest thing that I'm finding right now is that some of the smaller things are becoming big things. If you're looking at a home with a dock, you've probably seen some of the pictures where the dock has like a shade or like a rooftop over it. Many areas in Florida, they've ended the policy of allowing those. So if you've got a roof system or some sort of shade over a dock, you can't make any changes to it or any major repairs or alterations to it. They'll make you take it down and bring it to code. So those will be, in many areas, I think, of the past. And then as far as the boards on there, if they're wooden boards or pressure treated, I mean, it's water, there's damage, there's moisture, there's wood rot. Those can be extremely, extremely expensive to repair and replace. And so if you've got a dock there, but it may not yet be useful for the future, it becomes a bigger and bigger thing to notice just which direction to take these things. And so, how do you keep it under contract? I'm spending a bit of time today on waterfront properties and talking about roofs and talking about docks, but these are important in those price points. Now, if we take it to a different end of the spectrum, an entry-level home, absolutely the roof is the number one thing. Now, there's a solution if you're in the entry level, and let's say, the median sales price, somewhere in the middle. If you know that the roof on your home is in the end of its useful lifespan, and it's pretty easy to tell. If it's more than 10 years, you should be thinking about it. I know the roofs will should last 20 or 30 years, but we're finding 18 to 22 is the sweet spot of trouble for most people, and they should be replacing. I'm noticing that when we get to 12 to 15 years, that's something that also needs to be addressed. So having the roof inspected prior to the sale and getting a wind mitigation report and a 4-point inspection done in advance, it will cost the owner some money, but it can be provided. And if it's clean, you can provide that to a buyer. Now, they're welcome to do their own inspections. That's always available to them. But for many people, if they can get that done in advance, it really tells the buyers, listen, it's okay to make an offer on this house. And if there's two that you like and you're a little uncertain about one, I mean, let's face it, if things are similar and prices are similar and one has been pre-inspected, that week or the week before you're buying a home, it's a higher level of certainty for the buyer to know it's probably going to get to the inspections, or they're going to identify, in advance what those issues are. Many sellers, and self included, pre-inspect my homes. I let the buyers, anybody, see everything that's on the report. And then I just attach the receipts where I've repaired everything so they can see what was deficient, see what I've repaired. Everything's been 100% transparent. That's a greater ease for the buyer to go into there. A lot of times they'll might do some light inspections or visual, but they can rely on the report that you just had done and showed all the repairs. And that's absolutely one way to prevent contract items down the road that creep up unexpectedly. So long story short, pre-inspecting your home with a highly rated company, not one that's cooking the books. And I want to be careful about this, but if it's your friend, the inspector, and they're little generous on your side, I think it's got a few extra years. It's going to be okay. I don't know too many inspectors going to stick their neck out these days with the amount of litigation going on and problems at roofs and things like that. If somebody would even offer to do that, I would probably not use that report because it's probably showing up in their reviews someplace. So be super careful about who you choose to inspect. I'd find somebody highly rated with verifiable reviews online, and I would interview the inspection company. And I'd interview a couple of them and make sure that you're choosing the right company so that if a buyer ultimately calls it a company to question that report, that you might have a good standing as far as having it be a verifiable, really good report. It's the best thing I know to do right now is just pre-inspect your own home before you sell it. If you're a buyer, do your homework. If there's any other issues that are going on right now, just buyer beware. In this market, it's hard to get it under contract. It's even harder to keep it under contract. This is Ron Wysokarski for the Black Hole of Real Estate.